I come here all the way with another story from the villages of Tamil Nadu, and I would like to quickly, just very quickly, want your attention on these images. Please go to the next one, of the community, so that they are there in your mind while I talk about them. And while you see the community, the Tamil Jain community, who many scholars didn't think that there was a living Tamil Jain community. They were generally restricted to a fossilized religion that was always either it had risen at some point in history or fallen at another point in history. But I just wanted to just see the, can you go to the next ones please quickly? Just quickly see the community and keep them in your mind while I talk about them. While you do that, I just play for a minute a voice of one of the Tamil Jains from Virukam, a village in South Arcot district. And that's the story I will talk to you about.
அரசாட்சி பண்ணிருந்தான் செக்கிலி அவன் ஜாதி வந்து செக்கிலி சக்கிலிக்கு வந்து அவன் என்ன பண்றான் நம்ம சக்கிலின்னு சொல்றாங்கன்னு சொல்லிட்டு அந்த நேரத்துல என்ன பண்ணா இந்த மாதிரி எல்லா ஜாதியிலையும் பொண்ணு கட்டணும் அப்படின்னு அவன் ஒரு அபிப்பிராயப்பட்டு எல்லாரையும் போய் கேட்டுவாங்க. ஐயரு, பிராமணன், ரெட்டியாரு, ஜெயின்ஸ் எல்லாரையும் போய் கேட்டான். அதுக்கு என்ன பண்ணேன், பாப்பா வந்து எப்பவும் கிருக்கு புருஷன். அவன் என்ன பண்றான், எங்களை விட உயர்ந்தவங்க ஜெயிலர் இருக்காங்க, அவங்க பொண்ணு கொடுக்கறதுக்கு ஒரு தயார்னு சொன்னா நாங்க எல்லாரும் கொடுக்கறதுக்கு தயார்.
So this is only, I've just played part of that tape. It's a recorded storytelling session which I attended, and I mean it's not a storytelling session as said, but this is the story which almost all the Jains in South Arcot district talk about. Before I go on to the story, let me say very briefly about the Tamil Jains. They are categorized today as a minority community numbering about 30,000 or so in number, in population. And it's been a long way for them to have come to this level, having been rich contributors to the Tamil language and literature in a big way. We have already heard a lot about it. And the Tamil Jain settlements today mostly are found in the North and South Arcot district, Chengalpet and Tanjavur districts. And the Tamil Jains are locally referred to by other people as Nainar. So they would say this is the Nainar Teru, that is the street which the Nainars occupy, the Tamil Jains. And they are all Digambar Jains, the ones I am talking about. And they are not the later migrant Shwetambar Murti Pujak Marwadi Jains who may speak Tamil. So I am speaking of a Tamil Jain community. Now the story, part of which you heard from one of the Tamil Jains of Virukam village, goes like this. A ruler of Senji from a lower caste wanted a high caste bride for himself. He went to the Brahmins and other high castes. The Brahmins sent him mischievously to the Jains. They said, if the Jains give you a daughter, we are ready to give you our daughter as well, because the Jains are a higher caste than we are. So he went to the Jains. The Jains was horrified that a lower caste ruler should ask for a daughter in hand. So what they did, they tied a dog to the wedding post, called him that day, and they said, if you can make this black dog turn into white, we will give our daughter in marriage to you. Obviously, the ruler was offended by this kind of an insult, and he ordered the beheading of several Jains in Senji country. Fearing this, many of the Jains in the Senji country in that period turned to Shaivism, and they are called the Shaiva Velalars or the Nirpushi Nainars, according to the Jains. And according to the Jains, they are called Nirpushi Nainars because they smeared sacred ash on their foreheads to avoid being persecuted. Now there are versions to this story. At times the king wants to marry a Jain girl himself. At times he wants his sons to marry the Jain girl. And in some versions the Jain lay strict conditions that you say, you please straighten the dog's tail. If a dog's tail is straightened, we'll get our daughter married to you. Now I'm not going into the details of the versions, but there are certain commons in the story which I will shortly come to. The story is also called among the Jains the Sumandan Talai Pattu story. Sumandan is bearing, Talai is head, Pattu 10 heads. They say that the king didn't stop just at beheading the dead Jains. He commanded that the person who beheads 10 Jains should carry the head of every 10th Jain killed. Now this is how the term Sumandan Talai Pattu came about. Now, there are questions to be asked of this story which I shall now attempt, which lead us to understand its significance in the terms of Tamil Jain community, constructing its own identity. There are also context and social historical terms that the story reveals. But I'll just make a point or two here. The story is assigned its historicity in a sense and is given a historical time by Thurston in his Castes and Tribes in South India. He says that it's 1478 AD, in a period when Duppala Kisnappa Nayak, a Nayaka chieftain under the Vijayanagara Empire, it's in his time that the story happened, and he assigns the story an event status. Even Mackenzie has recorded this story, much in a similar manner in which the person from Wilcom told me the story. The same story is also recorded in Mackenzie manuscripts. One is not denying here that narratives add layers upon the original, as if there was one, of history, and larger historical space and time cannot be discounted. Yet in those added layers there remain a few constants in collective memory that need to be taken as historical sources as well. What is important is to treat the community as a historical subject as much as a historical agent. Now, Thurston notes that in 1478 AD, the ruler of Jinji, as it was called, as Senji was referred to by the colonialists, was one Venkatam Pittar, Venkatapati, and who belonged to the low caste of Kavarais. This is what Thurston says. And he narrates the same incident that I have told you about. And he also adds that meanwhile another Jain of Jinji country, Gangaya Odayar of Tainur, had fled to the protection of the Zamindar of Udayar Palayam in Trichinopalli, who befriended him and gave him some land. And he fetched Veera Senacharya, who made a tour of Jinji, got some people to return to their faith. And these people had become mostly Shaivites, taken off their sacred threads. You must make a note of this, that the Tamil Jains wear the sacred thread, much like the Brahmins do. And Veera Senacharya gave a lot of punul, that is sacred thread, to the Jains, to the Shaivas to become Jains again. That's how the Jain faith was restored. Now, the above story is also recorded by Mackenzie. Now, I want to place myself in a context here as to how the story happened. The story came to me, as it were, in each of the villages of South Arcot that I visited, in search of the Tamil Jain community. In the while that the story happened to me, I became a mere tool or an instrument or a medium to record the Tamil Jain's perceived history. My role was perhaps, in a sense, that of a typical social anthropologist and a journalist, which is also my profession, incidentally, in recording as much as I could lay hands on. The community was narrating the story almost invariably as if they were telling me who they were and what they had been through. And one needed to understand their perspectives on persecution. While the Shaiva Bhakti period persecution everybody had known and I had heard and read about so much, and I expected to hear the same again, this story was altogether new to me. And it had many constants and few variables, and it was important for me to understand the context of the story in the first place. Later on, one tried to deduce and analyze the possible historical place of this story rather than historicity per se, in terms of it being an event in a set time and date, though of course it had a larger historical time period to it than